the world. But I think especially in this day and age, in the 21st century, we as women love control. You know, women today, it's startling. There's actually a statistic that childlessness among women has doubled in the past 20 years. Because more and more women are more about their careers and attaining success than they are about building families and having children. So it's either happening so much later in life or not at all for these women, because the priorities have changed. You know, Susie Homemaker is seen as an evil villain, the 1950s woman that was just weak, and what women are going after today in our world, and what you guys are seeing in the women around you, is all about wanting to take it on ourselves. And yet, ironically, on the other side of this, you see Hollywood and the media and every advertisement and magazine and book you can read has got something in there with women figuring out how to bear more of themselves, how to expose themselves more, and how to give up their bodies in degrading ways, and really, you know, just sell sex, sell their body image. And so it's this ironic paradox of what women of the 21st century are looking at. You know, the media screams out that sex sells and that image is everything. In a recent survey of 100 top Hollywood producers who kind of dictate what comes in movies, they're comprised of 93% of them never attending church, 80% of them approving that homosexuality is okay, and more than 50% believing that adultery is not wrong. You know, if you look at the new releases from Blockbuster, it's Friends with Benefits, it is No Strings Attached, Love and Other Drugs, Orgasm Diaries, Cougars Incorporated, and The People I've Slept With, and I could go on and on with the movies that are just on the new release list this month. You know, this is what these media producers and directors obviously believe and are dictating for the women around us to see what works, right? You know, in Massachusetts, we are known as a very, well, we are not, but Massachusetts is known as a very liberal state. You know, we've got gay marriages have been happening and legal for a while now, and it's been amazing to be on some of the most prestigious women's colleges in really the world. And as I've studied the Bible with some of these women, it's remarkable to see what is being taught and what women are being handed to just give them that freedom to know that control is right and what they should want. You know, on some of them, they've got school-funded naked parties where literally the school has sponsored them to come to these parties to express their feminism and just feel free and liberated. It's crazy what our world is offering, and it scares me for what my daughter is going to see around her. You know, we live in some remarkable times today, but I believe that you are remarkable women in a very different way, in a godly way. And I believe that God has such a better way for all of us, a right way, just to be able to voice what He wants in a way that works, that is totally opposite of the world's definition of power. You know, it's really God's definition of surrender that I think empowers us as women. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is surrender. You know, what does the word surrender mean? Really, it's giving up or relinquishing control. Giving up, totally abandoning our rights and submitting completely. This is really a hard thing to do for women, for me. I know that. Like, this is why Eve struggled way back then, you know, to have to be put under the curse of submission. It was a curse, because we as women, way back then and now, love to be in control. And so as we look at the scriptures today, I want you to ask yourself, what does this mean for me? I believe the Bible gives us an amazing and really a perfect example of what surrender is in Mary, the mother of Jesus. And we're going to look at her life, really journey through her life today as we talk about surrender. You know, who was Mary? Most of the world knows Mary. You know, she's a very, one of the most famous characters in the Bible. And yet when you look at who she was not a prophetess. She was not royalty. She wasn't rich. She wasn't in the ministry. She was probably somewhere around 14 years old, probably dreaming about getting married one day, planning her wedding as her parents had, arranged the marriage with Joseph. She was young, she was poor, and she was female. And yet, God chose her for one of the most important acts of obedience from Him ever. She was the first person ever to hear the reality of Jesus coming. It was her. God chose her to go, this Messiah who the world has been waiting for is coming, and you are going to bring Him into the world. She was the first one to hear His name, what it would be, to see His face, to touch Him. She was heartbroken at the foot of the cross, like probably no one else. And yet thrilled, I'm sure, like no one else, at His resurrection. She is a woman who finds surrender in an amazing way. And I'm so excited. I've been so inspired as I've looked at her life over these past, few weeks and months thinking about her. And I'm really excited to share her life with you today. Surrender is relinquishing all control to God, letting Him determine our steps with a willing heart. And it's really, I believe, the only way we can obtain true peace and joy. Turn over to Luke chapter 1. My first point is the exciting call of surrender. And in Luke 1, we begin with Mary's story. It says in the 6th month, verse 26, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of David. The virgin's name was Mary. The angel went to her and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored. The Lord is with you." Mary was greatly troubled at his words, obviously, and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. But the angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God. You will be with child and give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever. His kingdom will never end." "How will this be," Mary asked the angel, "since I am a virgin?" The angel answered, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. So the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. Even Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child in her old age. And she who is said to be barren is in her 6th month. For nothing is impossible with God." "I am the Lord's servant," Mary answered. "May it be to me as you have said." Then the angel left her. And I actually love the New Revised Standard Version of verse 38. It says, "Then Mary said, 'Here am I, the servant of the Lord. Let it be with me according to your word.'" Okay, so try to picture the scene here. You've got Mary, and who knows exactly, where she was, maybe sitting under a tree somewhere, daydreaming about Joseph, planning out her wedding. And all of a sudden, "Greetings," says an angel. I can't even imagine, as she's caught up in this daydream. She must have jumped 50 feet backwards, heart pounding, and looking around her trying to figure out, "Are you talking to me? What? Who is this?" Eyes wide, trembling. Try to imagine. They say, the Bible says she was greatly troubled.
Just like.
I would think so. Really, greatly troubled is probably a very nice way of putting that. And yet you look at how quickly she responds to what Gabriel is saying to her. She has an attitude of absolutely, "Here am I, whatever you want, I am your servant." It's amazing. In this instant, in this moment, Mary couldn't see the future before her. She didn't understand the full picture of what carrying the Messiah was going to mean. She had no idea how her life was about to be radically altered forever. How her plans were going to change, how her wedding was going to be a little different than she had thought. And yet her spirit was so ready to be used by God the way He chose for her. It was an exciting call. she said, here am I. You know, she didn't need a bottom line in this situation. If God said it, Mary did it. And that is what happened. You know, how are we with this? You know, obviously, I don't think any of us have had angels and immaculate conceptions going on. But you scale it down to a much smaller level, which is even more challenging. And we go through challenges, but how are we with this? Is God's call exciting to us? Okay, I don't know exactly where this is going to be, but here am I am your servant, I am willing and ready to go. You know, do you remember the day you became a Christian? When you came up out of the water, you had to be excited. I mean, this was the most exciting, yet scary, just challenging decision that all of us have ever made, and yet by far the most exciting, full of hope and promise, forgiven of our sins, day that we have ever had. You know, I remember my parents. I remember becoming a Christian, and later on my parents driving me to drop me off to my dorm my freshman year of college. And it was a scary time. I remember holding back tears. Actually, I'm trying to hold them back, I'm sure, and fell. But I was scared. And I was really nervous about going into college. And I you know, in that time, I was going to the University of Connecticut. They had a great campus ministry there. I was just so excited to have God's stories be played out in my own life. I had heard all these stories of campus ministry in my parents' day and age, and I just was so excited to go see people's lives transform before me, to be a part of God's dreams. You know, to live radically, to go in with best friends that I went into college with, to go in with them as partners, to see amazing things that God would do. It was an incredible time. It was exciting. You know, I think about one of the sisters in our ministry who actually left, Elizabeth Bean, and she is from Miami and came up to Boston University, and she's somebody that I think of as just a woman full of dreams. She just went and did the one-year challenge in South Africa, and it's been so exciting to hear the stories that she's had, of just the way God is just opening doors to people, and she's seeing people become Christians, and just doing something that's risky and what she's never done before, but really excited to go after a dream for God. You know, and I look at this room, and I was telling Kelly before I got here, this is just a special time in campus ministry. I feel spoiled to be here. I feel privileged and honored to still get to be a part of campus ministry with you, because you guys are dreamers. Absolutely. This is an amazing room filled with women who I believe wouldn't be here if you didn't want to have great impact on the world around you. You know, but I think too often we want to be in control of the adventures God chooses for us. You know, we want to be called, we're ready to go, you know, most of the time, and yet we want to control how our plans will go. We want to manipulate the details a little bit. I think as women, we're naturally planners. You know, we like to just have things just so. We have our order of things, and, you know, we envision our weddings from the time we're 5, and we think about all these, just, we have it in order. What should happen when it doesn't go that way, we know what, you know, that's how we are. You know, I think about even myself, and my third baby, basically, my first baby was 6 weeks early, she was about 4.5 pounds. My second baby was 4 weeks early, and he was 6 pounds. But my third baby was not wanting to come at any time soon. And I had never gone through a full pregnancy. I had gained twice the amount of weight, and she was twice the size of my first daughter, and I was really ready for her to be out. And so even when it came to babies being born, I wanted a plan. I wanted to be in control of a situation that really, babies being born, you don't have a lot of control over. I remember in my D group, I was like enormously huge. My feet were swollen everywhere. And I remember with the girls, we would just sit there and do these like rap dances and trying to do lunges to get the baby out of me. And run up and down the stairs some, and you know, all the while trying to have some spiritual conversations, of course. But I wanted this baby out. And I remember going to an appointment and just telling my doctor, I don't think I can't do this. Like, I cannot go anymore with this baby. And so she told me, she was very kind. She was like, yes, you guys who have babies early, you don't know how to handle going full term. So, if you can have contractions, show up on the monitor. I'll be on call on we could arrange, your baby's birthday. So I was so pumped. We got there. I knew that sitting actually in church, when I sat down, I could get contractions going, and I don't know how, but somehow I could work that. And but I remember, so we had this plan. We were going, and we got to the hospital parking garage, and Kevin had my bag, we had his book bag, and his backpack, and we had the diaper bag, and so we loaded. He had computer books all in it, as heavy as we could get. I loaded on the backpack. I held the bag. I took the diaper bag, and we literally started running laps around the hospital parking garage because I wanted this baby out. I really wanted her to spend some of my time in the plan of things. So I got around to running, and I get there, and I'm like, okay, let me have mom right now. I can feel the contractions. I learned. And my doctor was wonderful, and she came that evening, which was great. But I have to say, I probably was not amazingly surrendered at that point. And yet, I think for us, God does want to be God must be in control. It's got to be His timing. And for us, do we respond like Mary? Is surrender exciting to you? I think a lot of times when we hear submission and surrender and trusting God, that's just one of the words that's like, oh, that's just hard. And yet, to Mary, this was an exciting call. It was incredible. She said, may it be as you have said, period. And I think for us, how well do we do at surrendering, in the dreams for our life, and putting God's kingdom first, and prioritizing our planners, our schedules, to not put our careers or academics, what we want, how we think that, our best resume is going to be completed when we graduate, and all these things that we can do. Do we care more about that versus putting God's kingdom first, prioritizing? How are we at just getting input in our lives, wanting to know, how am I doing with this, seeking advice, and really asking for others to help us to trust in God, to serve? How willing are we to serve even the most menial of tasks? You come to a conference like this, and it's glorious, it's amazing, and yet, there's all this talk of just even leadership, and just all these, let's do great things and dream, and it's just this amazing thing, but there's a lot of behind-the-scenes things that happen, whether it's at a conference planning or just in day-to-day life, and how eager are we to serve willingly the menial tasks? I love Julia Rogers and Tiffany Berger in my ministry. They are just, they are amazing servants, and I was texting Julia a couple days ago. We were trying to get our house ready to show and possibly sell it. And I was like, I'm having a bathroom scrubbing party. Want to come? And she texted 3 seconds back, I love cleaning parties. I'm there. Can't wait to be there. And it's not just that she's being funny and cute and sweet. That is her heart. That is just how she is. And we had a fun bathroom scrubbing party. But I love to hear my attitude. Do we have that? It's got to be God's way or no way. And He will make it exciting. And I think for Mary here, it was the beginning of an exciting adventure. And yet, as we move into our second point, we'll quickly see, the saying that all good things must come to an end. I think for Mary, it wasn't coming to an end, but there were some bumps that came in her journey. And that brings me to my second point, the unavoidable challenges of surrender. You think about Mary, and at this point, after she's seen Gabriel, she's pregnant, she's on her way to Bethlehem, and things are pretty good as far as just in her mind carrying God's Son. What an amazing privilege. It's a radical faith, but it's exciting. And she has the baby. Everything considered, it was a pretty amazing time. Think about it. She's got shepherds just flocking to her, wise men traveling across the globe to bring her these rare, precious gifts, like the shining North Star coming over her head, over the roof where she is, the angels singing and rejoicing, and the Messiah coming into the world. Could really, except for the barnyard delivery, which probably wasn't as glorious, but really, could life get more glorious in this moment, holding her baby in her arms, looking at his face, and knowing here he is, what I have been waiting my whole life for, the Messiah. I'm looking into his eyes. It was amazing. And yet, as she was marveling over Jesus, taking in this time, she quickly, 8 days old, they go take him to the temple, and she needs to And Simeon, is just in awe of Jesus, and yet he says to Mary, your son's going to be rejected, and a sword is going to pierce your own soul too.
Yeah, just switch.
Very quickly. And I'm sure Mary didn't understand what was going on, but these are the words of somebody who's been waiting Jesus, that I'm sure she's coming from the chorus of angels, and look at my son, and here's the Messiah, and Simeon's going, he's going to be rejected, and your soul's going to be pierced by a sword. And I'm sure she was just, what is that? And then all of a sudden you get this verdict out by King Herod, who just says all boys under the age of 2 are to be slaughtered. Yeah. And she goes on from there, and I just cannot even imagine as a mother what you would feel both in fleeing for your son's life, to then imagining all these other mothers losing their children because of your son, to then going on and Jesus, they for whatever reason it's in the scriptures that Mary can't find Jesus at the temple as he grows as a boy. And the anxiety that she has and wanting to go back, and already, just wanting to take charge and control. Where is my son? Why are you worrying me, Jesus? I'm sure, understandably, when her son is wanting, he's got executioners after him at infancy, she's got some reason to worry. Things are changing for her, and she's having to learn surrender in a totally different way. I can't imagine all the things she feels and what she must have gone through. Emotionally, as a parent, as a mom, you think about your children and you see them being born, and you're just like, I've got these dreams for them, and I just want the best for them. And it is not at all, I don't remember any time looking at my children as babies thinking, you're going to be rejected one day, you're going to be killed, you're going to be hunted down, people are going to hate you. That is not my vision as I look at my baby of what's going to happen. And it's heartbreaking. Even, I have dealt with nothing like this. But even, with my own kids, when you see them being hurt or them going through pain, it is heart-wrenching. Emma, again, she's 8, she's in 2nd grade, and I remember back in the spring, she came home from school one day, and she walked in the door and she just looked really down. I said, how was your day? She said, it was terrible, Mom. And she just looked like she was about to cry. And I said, what happened? And she said, I was just walking around recess all by myself today. I felt like I was going to throw up, but I wasn't sick, and I was just sweating, and I just was feeling really nervous, and I was just feeling so lonely, Mom. And I was like, what in the world happened? And her 2 best friends had come up to her at recess, and for no reason that I can figure out, said, we hate you, Emma, and we don't want to play with you anymore. And it just crushed me. I sat on I get emotional just about recess stories already. But I remember sitting on the couch with her and just crying, hugging her. We were both crying, and Caleb, my son, runs over, and he's just hearing the story. He's got just Emma, do you want me to go beat them up for you? And he went on to say, Emma, you are my bestest friend, and I will always want to play with you. I started crying again. But already in 2nd grade, I'm dealing with the, ordeals of rejection, and my daughter going through hard things. How much more was Mary going through at all of the things she was facing? It is hard to trust God when things are going on. How do we respond when we can't understand? I wonder, Mary was trying to figure all of this out. What must have been going through her head, and how she responded to God to try to understand the Messiah coming, and yet all of this not fitting into the picture of how she had envisioned the King, the Prince of Peace, the Son of God. I'm sure this was not what she had pictured it being like. She was worried, she was fearful, and yet she had to learn to trust God. At this point, Mary wrestling with trust, it was a very real challenge to surrender. You look at, as she goes on in Jesus' life in John chapter 2, it says, on the 3rd day a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, they have no more wine. Dear woman, why do you involve me? Jesus replied, my time is not His mother said to the servants, just do whatever he tells you. Okay, we've progressed a little bit in Jesus' life. He's no longer 12. He's 30 now, about to begin his ministry, but not yet his time. And yet you've got Mary still wanting to be mom here and take charge. She wanted Jesus to show himself now. She felt like, okay, you are the Son of God. Come on, what are you waiting for? Let's get the miracles rolling here. Let yourself be known. It was just, again, the idea of surrendering and wanting to take control of Jesus. Look in Mark chapter 3 as we continue, because I don't really think Mary understood what she was getting herself into to want Jesus' time to come. Because as she would soon see, it was very different from anything she had envisioned or planned. And yet she still wrestled. In Mark chapter 3 and verse 20, it says, Then Jesus entered a house, and again a crowd gathered, so that he and his disciples were not even able to eat. When his family heard about this, they went to take charge of him, for they said, he is out of his mind. And the teachers of the law who came down from Jerusalem said, he is possessed by Beelzebub, by the prince of demons, he is driving out demons. Then Jesus' mother and brothers arrived. Standing outside, they sent someone in to call him. A crowd was sitting around him, and they told him, your mother and brothers are outside looking for you. Who are my mother and my brothers? He asked. Then he looked at those seated in a circle around him and said, here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does God's will is my brother and sister and mother. Here Jesus is deciding, he's no longer just going to go along with Mary. Just try and get into picture the scene. Mary, I don't know if Jesus looked straight at her when he said this, how they were set up, but I'm sure she felt a huge punch in the gut with this statement. This precious boy of hers was now being called, connected with Satan here, prince of demons. And he was becoming extremely controversial. The religious leaders who Mary had grown up her whole life looking to, hearing even about the Messiah coming from, were calling her son Satan. And yet Mary, of all people, even throughout this, remember the angel and all of that, she carried Jesus in her stomach. So of all people, Mary knew who Jesus was. And yet at this point in her life and in Jesus' life, she was having to decide again to trust and not to control Jesus as her son, but to submit to him as her Lord. It was a major role shift here, right? It was just, again, very different from what she had pictured. Who does he think he is? This was what Jesus coming here and this chaos, and how was she going to handle it? And I think here was really where Mary had to start taking it deeper in her character. Jesus was calling her out and calling her to decide if she was truly willing to obey God. There was still a huge part of her trying to do it her own way, trying to be mom to Jesus. And yet, to Jesus, this wasn't okay anymore. This challenge to Mary to be surrendered was great. And I think for us, we can relate to her response a lot of times. Okay, yes, Jesus, you be Lord, that's great and all, but I'm just going to help you with how to do that. How are we doing with the roles, in our life and letting Jesus be in control? Are we only okay with Jesus being Lord as long as it's us directing and kind of manipulating the details? How many times have we prayed prayers and along the way just I'm just going to kind of just try to facilitate, God answering my prayers and try to work this out just so that it happens, I'm sure it was easy for Mary with the angel celebrating over her, but now this was completely different. That part ended quickly. And submission, humility, trust were all before her and a call for her to go much deeper. For you in this room, what are the greatest challenges in your life right now tempting you to hold on to the control of your life? And failing to surrender to Jesus' will for your life. Another inevitable challenge to surrender. It's just perseverance versus quitting, right? You know, my mom always told me perseverance starts when you feel like quitting. And that's when it gets really, really hard. You know, when you think about Mary, how many times do you think she may have wanted to quit? Gone, okay, Gabriel, you didn't tell me all of this was happening here. You know, this wasn't quite what I envisioned that day we had that conversation back then. But when are you tempted to quit? You know, challenges and blind spots in our life, they're inevitable. They're gonna happen. And I cannot guarantee anyone's future in this room. But I can guarantee you that at some point in every person's life in this room, you're gonna be confused. People are gonna hurt you. You're gonna hurt people. You're gonna get tired. You're gonna feel weary. You will be afraid. You will sin. And you will have weaknesses in your life and things at some point will be hard for you. That is pretty much a guarantee. You know, coming up out of the waters of baptism does not guarantee any of us an easy life. It promises us hope after life and how to get through the hard in life, but it doesn't promise easy. You know, and it's at these moments that the inevitable challenges come that we are called the most to surrender, because it is at these moments that we are the most tempted to want to pull our hearts back, to not trust God, to not trust others around us, to want to give up and to quit, you know, to want to take control into our own hands to do it our way. You know, I remember for me in my life, soon after we got married and we're in the ministry, this was just, I think the hardest lesson I had to learn was just being vulnerable, learning how to trust people and to trust God, that I could have weakness and still be loved by Him. I remember one day, it was actually on my birthday, I was going to a D group at Ruby Mitchell's house, who discipled me at the time, and, you know, it just started off bad. I know they all knew it was my birthday, and I'm sure some of it's, you know, revisionist history as I look back on it, but I remember kind of getting a dead bouquet of flowers, and happy birthday, okay, let's get on to discipling, and, you know, let's just have this D group, and I was just feeling so discouraged, and things all around me at that moment were not going well. Kevin and I were just constantly at each other and not on the same page and getting in arguments, and I was not talking to anybody but him, which I think really was frustrating to him at the time. And it was just a miserable time in my life. And I remember on this day we went over there, and I came back from that D group, and Ruby had said, you know, we want to get some time later to talk, so I know you're feeling a lot. And I went back to my bed, and I literally on my birthday just laid in bed and sobbed for 3 hours straight. And we drove that night over to my family's house to have a birthday dinner. I know Kevin got me flowers, was trying to cheer me up, and I was completely uncheer-upable. And we got with Chip and Ruby, you know, the next day or so. And I just started, like, vomiting all of this stuff, just all these things I had been feeling, but had never talked about, things that I was scared about, things that I thought I was failing in, ways that I had just, you know, the fight with Kevin, just to feel like, I'm going to tell you some of the things I said to him, and it was mortifying to me to put myself out there in a way to go, I set up this image of myself, but this is what I was saying to my husband, and this is what I was doing, and that doesn't quite go with how I want you to see me. And as I started talking, you know, it was mortifying, and it was humbling, and I remember Chip looking at when I do that, when I want their input and let them in and show them the good, the bad, and the ugly of me. But that takes surrender to go, okay, God, this is not, me in control anymore. It's putting my whole self out there, and come what may, I hope people still like me. And they did, and they will still like you. And to know that is why Jesus came, that I didn't have to be perfect, was amazing. In Jeremiah chapter 17, it says, "This is what the Lord says. Cursed is the one who trusts in herself, who depends on flesh for her own strength, whose heart turns away from the Lord. She will be like a bush in the wilderness. She will not see prosperity when it comes. She will dwell in the parched places of the desert, in a salt land where no one lives. But blessed is the woman who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in Him. He will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought and never fails to bear fruit." Our way versus God's way. I remember Kristen Cruz last year. She's going to be a senior at Emmanuel College, and she's awesome. I've a few women who are as passionate and zealous for God and His mission than her. But she had a tough year the year before last. We studied the Bible with countless women. So many that came so close to becoming Christians and didn't. And I remember just talk after talk in her dorm room or in my car, just where she would be sobbing and trying to encourage her. This is God's timing. It's not about how you want it, but you can't pull your heart back. And that is what she wanted to do so many times. And feeling like, how do I give my heart again? How do I not want to give up on this when people don't want it? She went away to Berlin that summer, just feeling a little more hopeful that, okay, let me go make a difference on the mission field. And it was a horrible summer. No one responded with faith. The church was going through a lot, and she just came back even more defeated. I remember sitting in the car with her in the parking lot of our grocery store on our way out to a leaders retreat. And again, just having this conversation and just, Kristen, God is using this time to refine you, but it's not going to be the way you want it done. And at that point she was telling me, okay, I think I can't even be a leader anymore. I think I'm just going to go after becoming president of the Spanish club and give myself to chorus at school, and that's just what I need to do right now. And like Chip taught me, I started laughing at her, and I was like, you're not going to do that. It's not really what you want to do. And I remember her having a turning point and just realizing, okay, this is not about me. It is not about how I think things are going to happen or me being in control of how things turn out. And it was amazing as she surrendered and began to trust God for real. This past year, she studied with and baptized 4 women in her Bible talk who are amazing. Megan, who's in Atlanta for the summer, Anisha, and Elijah, and Claire. She baptized them all, late night in the Charles River, which is probably the dirtiest body of water I can imagine. But it was clean that night. Kristen had to learn some hard lessons before she was able to see the fruits of how God would find her, learning to trust God through His way. Sisters here, you need to embrace humility and vulnerability and stop trying to control what you look like, what image you want to give to people, and what you want to happen. Be trainable. My closest friendships are with those who have seen me at my ugliest and who I have seen them at their ugliest. The women in my group, we are bonded, we're close because we know each other. We've seen the real, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it's made us ultimately bonded for life. And absolutely, God's going to expose things in us, and it's not fun to go through it. It's unavoidable. But if we surrender to God's way of doing it, it brings about a great victory. That's my final point, is the victory of surrender. We left Mary and Mark 3, wrestling with doing it God's way, not being in control, surrendering to a different version of Jesus than the one she had wanted. In John chapter 19, it says, "Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, 'Dear Mother, woman, here is your son. And to the disciple, here is your mother. From that time on, this disciple took her into his home. You know, imagine this picture. Mary watching her son, the Messiah, the King of Kings, nailed upon a cross. You know, would she have ever thought, holding her baby in that barnyard that night, that this would be the way the Son of God's life would end? No. But you know, I think for Mary, all of this was a turning point. What it did to Mary at the cross was amazing. You know, do you think as she saw her son up on the cross that she was still wanting to do it her way? Or do you think she was moved not by her son, but now by her Savior? And we pick up in Acts chapter 1 and verse 10. And after Jesus is risen, this is where the Bible ends Mary's story. They were looking intently up into the sky as he was going, when suddenly 2 men dressed in white stood beside them. Men of Galilee, they said, why do you stand here looking into the sky? The same Jesus who has been taken from you into heaven will come back in the same way you have seen him go into heaven. Then they returned to Jerusalem from the hill called the Mount of Olives, a Sabbath day walk from the city. When they arrived, they went upstairs to the room where they were staying. Those present were Peter, John, James and Andrew, Philip and Thomas, Bartholomew and Matthew, James son of Alphaeus and Simon the Zealot, and Judas son of James. They all joined together constantly in prayer, along with the women and Mary, the mother of Jesus, and with his brothers.
You know, for Mary, this was it. She had waited for Jesus' entire life to claim his kingship, and now he was dying on the cross, so different from how she had ever pictured it. But this was God's plan. And I'm sure as she saw Jesus raise up into heaven and went back, ending on her knees in prayer, she got it. That, of course, God's plan was far more than she could have ever imagined it to be. Far better than anything she could have ever dreamed in her own way of doing things. That Jesus, her son, but now her Lord, had conquered even death. You know, God's plan was perfect and so different from her way. God had accomplished his will, and Mary understood this now, I think, finally, at the cross. Does the cross move you? You know, I need to end here. But what I have seen God do in my own life has amazed me. And what I imagine he's going to do with your lives if we have this heart of surrender is going to be beyond anything we could ever imagine if we let God do it his way and not ours. Are you living for God, and will you continue to for the rest of your life? What holds you back from giving God total control? The cross gave Mary resolve for what the rest of her life would be. Her mission in life, her steadfast convictions. I don't think Mary ever looked back after this point. This was it. You know, she was selfless. I will die for this, I'm sure. She was inspired to stand not different from anybody else because she was the son of, she was the mother of the Son of God, but right there with the disciples on her knees in prayer. Not trying to tell Jesus what to do anymore, but letting him tell her what to do. You know, for us, come what may, building the church, continuing things into the next generation, whether we see lukewarmness, dealing with conflict, whether we're in plenty or we're in want, is this our attitude? Is the cross our final perspective when it comes to being surrendered? And our motivation for why we can surrender? You know, we started off talking about the 21st century women of our day. You know, what's going to help them to change? What's going to help these baby girls being born right now, all across our world, all up and down the East Coast? What's going to give them hope if you don't? And it's amazing to see what an attitude of surrender will do to impact people's lives forever. What hope are these little girls going to have? And who are they going to look to one day? I cannot wait for the day that my daughter learns from you. And I'm so grateful grateful that she has you.